We are ready to go ahead and get started on the legislative highlights for the 2025 legislative session, and we'll be talking about what we did in the most recent session, as well as what's coming up. If you would, help me welcome our panelists. We have Representative Matt Shaheen from House District 66. We have Representative Katrina Pierson joining our panel. We have Representative Caroline Harris-Davila, and we have Brady Gray from the Texas Family Project. So give them all a big hand. Not at all. It's the panel you've all been waiting for. So I just want to, I appreciate all of you being here, and obviously everyone here has an incredible amount of legislative experience and a vast range of issues. And so I want to talk a little bit about some of the highlights related to pertaining to our work at Texas Values, as well as just some other things that you might be interested in as well. But I think one of the issues that really came to the forefront this most recent session was the issue of parental rights, and we saw that in numerous pieces of legislation. The discussions we had over months and months of this work. So I want to start with you, Representative Shaheen. Let's talk a little bit about parental rights. Parents have the right to raise their own children as they see fit. It's a fundamental right. It's recognized by the Texas Constitution as well as the U.S. Constitution. And you authored a law that protects parents and really gives them support, especially in light of things that have been happening in other states. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, nobody loves a child more than mom and dad, right? And we do need to cultivate and protect those rights. The family is under attack, as we all know. And so the more that we can do as a legislative body to protect that bond between mom and dad and child is vital. So yeah, one of the pieces of legislation that I passed was it protects that parental-child relationship. And no matter if your child goes astray and starts doing the gender identity thing or sexual orientation thing, mom and dad cannot lose custody of their child. Believe it or not, there are states out there, California is one, Colorado is a recent one, where it is declared child abuse if you do not affirm your child's gender ideology, sexual orientation, and the like. So we've passed that piece of legislation. There's more work to do, but that was a big win. There was literally cases in other states where moms and dads were threatened to lose their child because they didn't accommodate, these liberal extremist ideologies.
Yeah, and that was an extremely important statute and presumption to put into law. It helps protect parental rights going forward. Representative Pierson, I want to go over to you real quick. Thank you for joining the panel. First session for you, right? But you're no stranger, of course, to politics and national politics in particular. Just tell us a little bit about your first session, how it went, and what were some of the issues that mattered to you as you came in?
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm so excited to be here. I am blessed to have one of the strongest conservative freshman class that I think Texas has ever seen, moving the Texas House in the right direction. And with regards to parental rights, the one thing that truly sticks out in my mind, which gives me the honor to be a part of Governor Abbott's legacy, is school choice. That is an issue that has been near and dear to my heart for over a decade. We were big proponents of it with the Trump administration, and really made that a key. So I'm very honored and proud to have been able to help pass that legislation for the state of Texas, because we all know, thank you, because we all know that there is an exit path from poverty, and that is a quality education. And I believe that we have just liberated an entire generations for Texas due to our education policy.
Thank you. It's really exciting. Representative Harris-Davila, Caroline, my friend, a lot of people don't know that you and I worked together before you ran for state rep and became for a while, the youngest state rep in the state of Texas until you were passed a little while back, I think, Caroline Fairley. But thank you for being on here, and just tell us a little bit about your background and why you decided to jump in and serve in the legislature as well.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. I was the youngest Republican woman ever elected to the Texas House when I first got elected. And then, thank you. And then, yes, Caroline Fairley is one of our new state representatives, and she got elected when she was 25. So I like to say we're making a lot of great progress in Texas to bring young conservatives into great positions of leadership so that we can carry on to the next generation to preserve our freedoms. And when we talk about me jumping in, running for office, I've always let the Lord lead in my life and tell me what he'd like me to do. And I was very shocked when that answer was running for state representative. I was only 27 at the time, didn't have any campaign experience. I had worked for Senator Brian Hughes. If any of you guys know him, yes. He's an amazing state senator that we have here in Texas. And so I worked for him for 7 years before I ran for office. And when I ran for office, I had such an incredible opportunity. When I was knocking on doors, I had the ability to pray with people at their door. And my parents even led people to the Lord. And so during that process, the primary, the runoff, and then I had a general election, it really taught me that, yes, our job is to fight for our conservative principles. We don't want men and women's restrooms. We do not want that. We don't want children to have these horrible surgeries that are irreversible. We don't want these things, but we also have an opportunity, those of us that run for office especially, to make an eternal impact. And so I try to remember that when I'm campaigning, and then also when we work on this legislation. One thing I love about SB 12 is in the beginning of that parental Bill of Rights, it says that parents are given those rights by their creator. And I love that, because when you have elected officials, even our founding fathers, that recognize the rights given to us by God and our fundamental, rights and things that we have that come straight from the Lord, straight from the Bible, then you get this incredible legislation that recognizes those rights and where they come from. We've got to remember where they come from. So it's an honor of a lifetime to get to serve in the Texas legislature, and I am so excited to get to continue working with amazing members like Katrina and Matt and great groups like Texas Values to continue that work. So I'm glad to be here.
We paid her to say that. No. Going right down the line, Brady, president of Texas Family Project. Tell us a little bit about your work and what got you involved initially in this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, thank you so much for having me as well. And so I got involved almost by necessity. I had no desire to be in politics, no desire to have anything to do with politics, really, other than just go vote and maybe watch the news every now and then. I grew up in a Christian conservative household. We were in church every time the doors were open, and the ministry background of my parents led me into ministry. I went to a little Baptist university, went straight into ministry, and that's what I was going to do. For 15 years, I was in full-time ministry, and like many of you, probably all of you, 2020 changed my life pretty radically. We watched the government become tyrannical and start telling us what we had to do, and I found myself as an activist. I found myself helping church members and figure out how we could change things. And through that led me to just more and more problems that we needed more voices on, that we needed more people in the fight. And that's where Texas Family Project was launched. We started that work in 2021, and I jumped off kind of full sail into it and been fighting for a lot of the same things that Texas Values has spent so many years fighting for, and kind of come alongside you guys and help fight these fights.
Thank you. So I want to, Caroline, I want to go back to you real quick. You alluded to Senate Bill 12, so before you jump the gun anymore, I'm gonna ask you to talk a little bit about Senate Bill 12 and sort of how it dealt with some of these bigger parental rights issues that issues like sexual orientation, gender identity, porn in school libraries. That was Senate Bill 13. but these are issues that you've heard Senator Angela Paxton refer to as "don't make me come down there" issues, right? So just tell us a little bit about Senate Bill 12, kind of what it was doing and how we solved some of those problems.
Absolutely. There are two things really that I want to highlight. One is just stating those rights that parents have. That's a big deal, because when we pass these laws, a lot of times the people that we're trying to regulate will say, oh, well, you just weren't clear enough. We don't have enough clarity. And so explicitly saying, even for example, that parents have the right to choose how they school their kids. I was homeschooled. My parents started homeschooling in the 80s when it was very questionable. And so I love that in our statute, we spell out those rights like that. And then the second thing is, I want all of you guys to know what's going on. So with SB 12, you have to have policies in place that you cannot instruct on DEI, but also you can't instruct on sexuality or help someone socially transition. You can't help a child socially transition. Yes, Amen is right. And every school district has to set up a policy in that respect. Well, a lot of school districts are not doing that yet because that bill is in a lawsuit. Now, that bill is still in effect, the law is still in effect, but there are some school districts that are deciding to wait to see how that lawsuit plays out. And in fact, I will tell you, the ACLU sent a letter September 10th to all school districts telling them to continue the social transition of kids and to continue to do it without letting parents know. Okay, so I'm just telling you, yes, the fight is not over. And so whatever school district you are in, I highly encourage you to look and see if they have those policies in place and just let them know that you would like them to put them in place, because that is what the law is currently today. So I just want to encourage you, this is nothing new. We are not new to this. This happened when Obama said parents shouldn't know what's going on with their kids, and long before that. And so I just want to encourage you to help continue the fight, because the left certainly is not going to stop. And I'm just shocked that the ACLU put out that guidance. But I want you to know that so you guys can help us stay engaged and help us approach these issues and make sure those school districts are doing the right thing.
I thought you were about to say LSU. I thought, what did they do?
Nope.
Brady, continuing on with that thought just a little bit. I mean, you guys worked on Senate Bill 12 as well, and then you also kind of focused on some of the DEI issues. Talk a little bit about your work on that.
Yeah, definitely. So the last legislative session, the 88th legislative session, we got the bill passed to ban the genital mutilation, the actual surgeries of those children. That's huge. Yeah, absolutely. And we were incredibly thankful the legislature took that action and got that done. But the reality is that 90% of that transition happens long before they ever get to that surgery. They're being socially transitioned as young children. They're being called different pronouns and different names. And so that was the next fight. We had to stop this. We had to continue to move the ball on this. And the DEI stuff is absolutely, I mean, we have these schools where we're no longer basing things on merit.
First of all, if I could interrupt you, explain what DEI means for some of us who may not have that knowledge prior.
Yeah, diversity, equity, and inclusion. What it means is that we're going to hire, we're going to teach based on race, based on sex, based on sexual identity, gender identity, and none of that makes sense. It makes no sense to hire somebody or to promote them based on their skin color. That's racism. To do it based on their sex, that's sexism. To do it based on their sexual identity, gender identity, that's psychotic. And so it doesn't make any sense. We should be based on merit. And so we need to have a system that is based on merit. We should hire the most qualified people. We should promote the most qualified people. We should have the most qualified people in place. And we should teach our children that qualifications matter, that merit matters. And so that's what this bill sought to do, is get rid of all of those things that are happening in our public schools. And the truth is that the left has burrowed into these institutions for decades. And we were just talking about it before the panel, but just as you pass any one of these bills, you'll begin to see them shift. You're already seeing the ACLU do things. You'll see You'll see these offices start to call themselves something different. They're no longer the diversity, equity, and inclusion office. Now they're an equality and outcome office. Now they're something different, and they'll begin to change these names and try to move the goalpost to make this harder. And so we have to stay diligent, and like Representative Harris-Davila was saying, we've got to define things well so that it makes it harder for them to shift those goalposts.
Thank you, Brady. Representative Shaheen, just want to kind of switch over on a different topic here, because you may have been the only person in the legislature who not only passed laws for the state, but you also won a U.S. Supreme Court decision here recently. So, talk a little bit about the age verification issue, the bill that you passed, and what the Supreme Court said about that.
Yeah, it was a pretty surreal experience. Second Tuesday in January, I'm getting sworn into office. My family's on the floor with me. My wife's holding the Bible. I'm putting my hand on the Bible. I'm taking the oath of office, and there's the speeches and all that kind of stuff. A lot of excitement at the Capitol on opening day of the legislative session. Well, that evening, I'm on a plane flying to Washington, D.C., because a piece of legislation that I had passed the previous session was before the Supreme Court. There were oral arguments. And so it was a piece of legislation. It was very straightforward. If you're a pornographic website and you want to function in the state of Texas, you do have to do age verification. It's no different than all the other millions of transactions that occurs on the internet every day as far as age verification. We were just applying that to the pornographic websites. And so I'm sitting in the Supreme Court the next day, and it was amazing to listen to these pornographic websites wanting to sexualize your children and your grandchildren. I know you're picking up the theme of all the battles that we're having to fight. There is a war against our children, and it's a spiritual battle. The Bible warns us that the evil one roams the world seeking who he can destroy. He wants to destroy our children. And the good news is we have some awesome legislators and nonprofit organizations that have stood up, and we've had some incredible victories in the state of Texas. But the battle's not over, and it'll never end. We're going to have to continue to fight this, because this is a spiritual warfare, and you all have a big part in that fight as well. But we had a big victory about 2 months ago. The Supreme Court did side with the children, so pornographic websites do have to do age verification. And the really exciting thing is our office just got wiped out with phone calls and emails from other state legislatures who's going to do the same thing. So you're going to see this spread across the nation. And this was a foundational opinion, because this type of challenge had never been before the Supreme Court before, right? Because they're arguing free speech, and they're arguing the burden to place on these types of organizations. A huge victory, and it sets some really important precedent for us in the future.
Yeah, I think this is possibly one of the most important Supreme Court decisions for our kids, that could have taken place in the last few recent years. So we're very grateful to that, and for your work on spearheading all of that, and making sure that all the right language was in place in statute. And of course, a lot of times, as Texas goes, so goes the nation. So we set the bar, and we set the standard a lot for other states and for the country. I want to switch over a little bit. Representative Pierson, talk with you a little bit too, because sometimes in these panels, we love talking about faith, family, and freedom type issues, but when we get on the legislative panel, sometimes we like to diverge a little bit and talk about other things as well, help people get a little bit of a feel for other issues that may be sort of somewhat slightly outside what we work on in particular. But I know you're a big Second Amendment supporter, and you talk about it a lot, but tell us a little bit about the Second Amendment legislation, what happened during the legislative session, and maybe with particular focus on some of the stuff on extreme risk protection orders that we accomplished. So.
Yeah, sure. We love faith, family, and freedom, and the reality is none of those exist without the Second Amendment. So I had the honor of also serving on the Homeland Security Committee, where a lot of these bills came through. We were very successful. this session in passing some great bills like the anti-red flag laws. My other freshman colleague, Wes Friedel, did a great job at banning firearm buybacks, so cities can no longer do that. And just some really great wins all around. And I'll just share from just my experience being at the national level with President Trump and going from state to state. People on the outside of Texas, they assume that, we're just like the Wild West. Everybody's walking around with guns on two hips, and that just was not the case. Many years ago, in fact, what I would tell people is that Bernie Sanders' constituents had more gun rights than the people of Texas. And under Governor Greg Abbott's leadership, we have gone from being one of the least supporters of the Second Amendment to now being one of the states that is the most supportive of the Second Amendment.
That's fantastic, and you played a part in that as well. Were there any other accomplishments on issues that you cared about that you care to share with our supporters as well?
Sure. There are a couple of issues, and one of the things that we look at as far as legislators goes, what bill they pass, what legislation they're coming up on, but what you don't get to see all of the time are the things that legislators have the opportunity to do on the administrative side. We all have our big faith, family, and freedom initiatives out there on the campaign trail, but we also have the opportunity to make significant changes within agencies and with programs and planning. And so one of the things that I've been able to do, something that's been near and dear to my heart, is work on some of the mental health issues. I have 14 years in healthcare. I spent a lot of my time in substance abuse and psychiatric issues. And so I went to the speaker's office and said, hey, I want to look and see what we're doing for people who are hurting in Texas, because we know hurt people hurt people. And if we really want to go further with protecting families and children, we have to heal people. And so we're working on a pilot program right now to implement possibly in the women's correctional facilities to help people heal. The technology and programs and treatments are available now to heal people, because if we heal parents, they're not passing down their trauma to their children, and we're gonna have healthy adults in the future.
Good. Caroline, we accomplished so much this session. So many victories, and I think in part to Speaker Dustin Burrows and his support and conservatism on those issues as well. But and we even came back in special sessions and we picked up a few more issues as well. But I think one thing that stands out in a lot of people's minds still is the taxpayer-funded lobbying issue. What happened with that?
Well, first of all, I want to highlight one other thing that you may not have heard of that we got past this session that I was so honored to carry, but hopefully in only another year or two, on the grounds of the Texas Capitol, we will have a monument called the Texas Life Monument that will be there forever to signify that in Texas, we are pro-life, we love women and children, and that monument will stand there forever to let everybody know that we do that in Texas. So that's just one thing I wanted to highlight that, that we accomplished. And then as far as taxpayer-funded lobbying, it did not get a hearing in the House committee. I don't know why. And for those of you who may not know a lot about taxpayer-funded lobbying, just imagine that your taxpayers could go towards someone who might advocate for gun buyback programs, or who might advocate for less parental rights, or who may even advocate against some business coming to your town that will increase the tax roll so that you don't have to pay as much property taxes, okay? So these are the things that we're talking about, that we're trying to make sure that your taxpayer money is not going to advocate for things that you don't want as the taxpayer. This past session, we already said that you can't use our tax money to go get an abortion in another state. You can't use our tax money, exactly. to have an abortion in our state via an abortion pill that comes in from out of the state. I mean, there's so much that we do to protect your taxpayer money. And in my opinion, taxpayer-funded lobbying is the next huge step that we can take towards advancing that mission and making sure that your taxpayer dollars are not working against you. And I can promise you, all of us up here, I mean, we signed letters, we worked so hard, and we will not stop working that hard to get that done. As long as it takes, we are in it to get that done.
Yeah, I think we've seen taxpayer-funded lobbying as sort of the engine to keep some of the other bad stuff going. So we have to shut that down in order to be able to make headway on some other things. Brady, I want to go over to you real quick, and you're going to get the last word on this because yesterday I had one job as a moderator, and that was to end on time, and I failed at that. So we're going to do that this time. But you got about a minute and a half. Talk a little bit about the SB 18 issue and keeping drag time story hour out of libraries and the work y'all did on that.
Yeah, so how many of y'all have seen the coverage of the drag shows in front of children? Pretty much everybody's seen that now. Maybe some of you haven't. If you haven't, it's a huge issue in the state of Texas. There's an issue that kind of lit the first fire for Texas Family Project, that we started going in and undercover filming these, and it blew up, and people were calling us and saying, why are drag shows only happening in Texas in front of kids? And we said, it's not only happening in Texas. We're just the only people talking about it. It's happening all over the place. Nobody else is talking about it. Well, now people are talking about it, and it became a big deal. Last session, I had a bill that passed that would have stopped those from happening, that unfortunately had an injunction put against it, and we're starting to see those rise again. And so this session, Senate Bill 18, sought to stop drag storytime hours. And if you don't understand what that is, because I didn't when somebody first called me and said, hey, there's a drag show happening, all-age drag show. What honestly went to my mind was Medea, Tyler Perry, Mrs. Doubtfire. I didn't understand what this was until I saw the first one and saw that, no, this is vile. It's grotesque. It's completely sexual in nature. These are grown men dressing up as women with prosthetic breasts and all sorts of other things, and they are doing sexual activities in front of children, and they're doing it all across our state. And those same people want to go into our public libraries, our publicly funded libraries, and read to children. And why are they doing this? Well, because they need to normalize this. They need to make your children not afraid of what appear to be monsters standing in front of them. And they need to normalize it. And so Senate Bill 18 sought to do that. That bill did pass. And similarly, it passed out of the Senate very early. Well, hold on, don't get too happy yet. Unfortunately, that bill died in the House. It passed out of the Senate in late March, and then it fizzled out in the House, got through committee and got put on a really late calendar and didn't get through. And there are so many great victories that happened this session, and so much hard work that was done, but it's a great example that the work is never done. There's always a fight to continue, and there's always more reason for all of us to be involved and all of us to be working hard.
That's a great way to end this legislative highlights for the front lines. Let's give all our panelists a big hand again. Thank you. Thank you all.